This is Kurt from Madison ModPo. To my right is Lou. To my further right is Jim. And today we are going to talk about Allen Ginsberg's Sunflower Sutra. What's remarkable about this poem is he wrote it in 20 minutes. And it was based on an actual experience. He was with Kerouac. I found this biography of Ginsberg. Ginsberg was walking in a San Francisco railroad yard with Jack Kerouac and Philip Whalen when they came upon an old battered sunflower, grimy from the dust and soot blown up by passing trains. And it's like the Blakean sunflower that we'll talk about. Allen was initially struck by the visual image of the once beautiful and majestic flower slowly battered by time and the effects of industrialized civilization. That evening, as he and Kerouac stood waiting by a door, Allen grabbed a pencil and scribbled down the poem and did it, like I said, in about 20 minutes. And with the exception of only a few words, the published version is identical to the original draft. The fascination that Ginsberg had with the sunflower came from visions of Blake that he had when he was an undergrad. He was reading Blake's poem, Ah, Sunflower, when he had this vision. It was an auditory hallucination of Blake's voice booming out the poem. It's so fascinating that he would mention in the poem, and it happened in real life, that Kerouac was with him. Because Ginsberg said that of all the literary influences on him is Kerouac and Kerouac's prose. Well, I'll share with you one last piece, and that is Ginsberg over time developed this style where he puts words together because they, as he said, they come from different parts of the mind, and he puts them together, and at the time he doesn't know really what it means, but he knows it belongs that way. He said it's like writing haiku. It's just a juxtaposition, and you put that space there with the words and something magical happens. He described it, the meaning arises as like developing a film back in before the olden days of film, or photography, where you would put it in the chemicals and the image would gradually emerge. He said, after a year or two of that, the meaning emerges for me. But at the time, it doesn't necessarily know what it means. He talks about, in writing, how did he reach the different parts of the mind that are existing simultaneously? The different associations which are going on simultaneously, choosing elements from both, like jazz, jukebox, and all that. And then we have the jukebox, the hydrogen jukebox. And that actually compresses in one instance, like a whole series of things. Or the end of sunflower with cunts of wheelbarrows, whatever that all meant. Or rubber dollar bills, skin of machinery. See, and actually in the moment of composition, I don't know what it means, but it comes to mean something later after a year or two. I realized that it meant something clear unconsciously, which takes on meaning in time, like the photograph. So, you guys want to go?
Yeah, this had immediately brought to mind the way things were before there was any electricity. Or newspapers. And there were folks that traveled the civilized world, and they told you what things were like in other places with poems. And they were the troubadours, the songs and the poems. That was the only way you could, if you were a poor citizen and couldn't travel, but you were in a village and this guy came by and he sang you some songs about this city where he had come from. And what more perfect description of a certain portion of San Francisco could you possibly have in the oral tradition than this, explaining to you where he was and what it was like. So that brought to mind this style, which is, to me, kind of a troubadour, descriptive, poetic style of showing you something, of explaining something to you, which to me is really perfect.
Well, you know, the title, Sutra, Sutra for me means that, coming from Buddhist tradition, that sort of contains the lectures and discourses of the Buddha, and so it's the vital teachings, you know, in a religion.
And you know, sutras are stories often, and koans are very difficult to decipher, which is, once again, this is an invitation to listen, read, see, feel, and go deeper. And the ultimate meaning may still be elusive. Yeah, I also think, though, at another layer, it's poetry, and it's the oral tradition of carrying it down, and it's like this. It's not exactly transparent what it means, but it gives you better access to and closer to the truths of what the teachings were because of that style.
You read them, you reflect on them, and then you try and change, or you try and make your life like that, or similar to that.
It was an oral tradition attempting to peel away truths that are attributed to the Buddha, blah, 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 that express human dilemmas about anguish and suffering and what can we do about it and how our mind plays a role in it all. And I think that it's like philosophy. The honest practitioner of sutras and philosophy will say, you know, I don't think we'll ever get to the truth, the absolute truth, but we're going to find a mechanism along the way to give us greater and clearer understanding of how to live our lives right now.
And I like what Jim said about a reference to an oral tradition, because initially the Buddhist sutras were not written down, but they were memorized
and embellished over time.
You know, the reference to the sunflower, in the text, Ginsberg does reference memories of Blake, my visions.
There you go.
Ireland.
So he's building on a tradition.
And it's a religious, visionary type experience.
Spiritual, at least. Yeah.
And the sunflower really brings that back to him, and that Blake poem is there. So, and the sunflower is a I forget the exact word, but follows the path of the sun during the day.
That's what's so neat, yes.
Very good point.
I grew sunflowers once in Ohio, about a half acre, completely covered in sunflowers. And to watch it during the day, if you were out working in the yard or working in your garden, to watch this whole field go like that was truly amazing.
Well, how they move.
10,000 sunflowers all moving right with the sun. It's really neat.
Some aspects of this that I thought we could talk about. Ginsberg does a lot of repetition in this poem. Locomotive is reference 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So what do you think the locomotive does for this? There are really railroad tracks or railroad cars here. Well, there's there's a literal aspect to the locomotive here, but there's also a symbolic reference.
Modernity.
Yeah, I think that the locomotive here is again a metaphor for what's happened as a result of the Industrial Revolution.
That's right.
So that's a great metaphor for.
And it's also a great contrast to nature.
To a sunflower.
To a sunflower.
Yes.
To the hills, to the forests,
right.
to the high Sierras, if you like. Go back to Snyder.
Sure.
Well, and another piece that, another word or image that Ginsberg repeats, dust. And another along with that, we have crime, but it's always,
The oily water in the river, pollution.
the pile of
But it
ancient,
reflects a beautiful sunset.
pile of ancient sawdust, sunset, crackly, bleak, and dusty.
What do you make of rubber dollar bills?
Yeah.
Is it the money
It's no good, or the
Goodyear made?
It sounds like it's artificial.
Well, no, but the thing is, part of this is a description of where modernity gets rid of its stuff. And if you go to small towns out in Nevada, you get a good example of that. You come to this West Side neighborhood, we recycle, we get rid of all our detritus. It's not around us, you'd never notice it. But there's a place where the tires go, the old tires, and they pile up.
Yeah, I think that the dust and grime are part of this modernity. This is not a shiny, bright world that Ginsberg's seeing.
no.
It's dusty, it's grimy, you know, you got these old locomotives.
The other thing, very quickly, is, I'll quote a little more. I rushed up enchanted. It was my first sunflower. Memories of Blake, my visions, Harlem and hells of eastern rivers, bridges, clanking Joe's greasy sandwiches, dead baby carriages. What does that mean? Does it mean there's a dead baby in them? Does it mean
No.
the carriages?
The carriage, it's the detritus, of modernity.
Okay.
Once
But
it doesn't work anymore, we throw it out. You were never no locomotive, Sunflower. You were a sunflower. And you locomotive, you are a locomotive. Forget me not.
Well, let's talk about, and that's great, because raises this issue of when Ginsberg capitalizes a word and when he doesn't.
Yes.
So when he first talks about generic locomotive, South Pacific, the first,
Southern Pacific.
thank you. Yeah. But when he looks at the sunflower, when he's addressing the sunflower they found, it is he capitalizes it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at sunflower. But then the next reference to sunflower is a different sunflower, and that's not capitalized. The first sunflower, the Memories of Blake. Next one I saw, the gray capitalized
The gray
sunflower.
sunflower, yeah, that's the sunflower.
The sunflower. Other references to locomotive. All of those are not capitalized. But then,
No, it says, and you locomotive is capitalized.
oh yeah, no, we'll get there. That was my plan. Perfect beauty of a sunflower, not capitalized. Excellent, lovely sunflower existence. But then he says, and this is, I think, really important for us. You were never no locomotive, capitalized sunflower. You were a sunflower. And you locomotive, you are the locomotive. So he's talking about the specific entity and just more generalized. He grabs the skeleton stick, sunflower, not capitalized. But it's just, I don't know if it's, how much significance to put with that, or whether this is just, poetic, one of the tricks he uses for clarification.
I think it's very definite what he did here, and talking about generic sunflowers and talking about that sunflower, which is
Specific
growing on
one.
a heap of junk, is very, and it brings it out very, very nicely.
Yeah.
I think the contrast between.
And then, of course, if it's a Buddhist sutra,
Yeah.
one central theme would be interbeing, how nothing is separate from anything else. And you can agree with that or disagree with it, but that's a central theme.
Well, again, what,
And you have to look deeply to see that.
sure. Who else very peculiarly in her poetry capitalizes things?
Emily Dickinson.
Emily Dickinson, yeah.
And it's interesting just to, study how she uses capitalizations.
And Frisco Hills.
Yeah, Frisco is capitalized.
So let's talk about the ending. We're not, first of all, I also should say the crown image he talks about as to the sunflower early on or midway through the poem, corolla, leery spikes pushed down in a broken-like battered crown. So he sees that and associates that with his sunflower. And then we get to the ending. So I grabbed up the skeleton thick sunflower, curious that he didn't capitalize there, and stuck it at my side like a scepter, delivered my sermon to my soul, Jack's soul too. So this is a religious moment or a spiritual moment
Sure it
for
is.
him. Sure. And anyone who listen, we're not the skin of grime. We're not dread, dusty image-less locomotives. And I'm not sure why he says image-less locomotives.
Yeah, it's a piece of material junk.
It's sort of generic, right? It's not
Right.
a locomotive.
This
Well,
is
there's a
about
whole folklore about locomotives and the railroad in this
That's
country.
right.
There are songs and pictures,
That's
and can be a very romantic thing. This definitely was not a romantic locomotive.
Well, I think he's also getting into the Ginsberg sexuality business there at the end.
Yeah.
His own sexuality, his own body, the grime and the ugliness. It isn't perfect. It isn't beautiful.
By our own seed,
Yeah. Yeah.
you could see some reference to sexuality there.
Mhm.
But then, so in contrast, we're not the dusty, imageless locomotives. We're
Right.
golden sunflowers inside.
That's right.
And, that, his visions of Blake,
That's right.
inside, blessed by our own seed and hairy, naked accomplishment bodies. So why are they blessed? Why are we blessed? Growing into mad, black, formal sunflowers in the sunset. And then this is sort of saying an out-of-body experience, it sounds like. Not only are we those sunflowers, but we look at ourselves, spied on by our own eyes under the shadow of the mad locomotive. Sunset, frisky, hilly, tin can evenings, sit down, and the last word, vision. And that can't be an accident that he decided to end it with vision.
Because the use of vision at the end there is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I think it really does go back to that Blake visionary moment as an undergrad, when he had this experience of the power of poetry. We are golden sunflowers inside, despite all the grime. We're not locomotives. We're sunflowers.
I like the Ginsberg use of the dash to connect adjectives and modifiers to nouns.
Where did he do that?
Yeah.
Soon to be toothless.
Those hyphens.
Hyphens, I meant. Yeah.
Oh,
What did I say?
Dash,
Dash, I meant
dash.
Yeah.
Corolla.
Yeah.
But he does use dashes really well, too.
No, but hyphens is what I meant.
Yeah.
Hyphens? Yeah.
Soon to be toothless.
I love that.
Oh, that's nice.
I like the word wily. The two old guys sitting in the junkyard talking, and he describes them as tired and wily, which means deceitful or cunning or
Cunning.
a little dangerous, and something wily, got to look out. Interesting use of that word, I found.
Well, and these lines, like the specter and shade of a once powerful mad American locomotive. Wow. How much is the thoughts of Blake's poem, Sunflower, brought into this poem, Sunflower Sutra? The sunflower, weary of time, who counts the steps of the sun, seeking after that sweet golden clime where the traveler's journey is done. where the youth pined away with desire, and the pale virgin shrouded in snow arise from their graves and aspire where my sunflower wishes to go. Blake seems to be talking about death and resurrection.
Yeah,
right?
resurrection.
Where the sunflower wishes to go.
Peace, ultimate peace.
The sunflower in Blake's poem is weary of time, but yet it counts the steps of the sun, as we talked about. The sunflower positions itself throughout the day, just as its position.
Well, certainly, Kerouac's sunflower is weary of time, extremely weary of time, been beat down by time.
In Ginsberg's
I
poem.
mean Ginsberg, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
It's
So
a
it
poor
aspires.
ghost of the sunflower.
It aspires to be more. It's, it's seeking after that sweet golden climb,
Mhm.
Right. Oh yeah.
Isn't that what we often do?
looking for more, a richer, deeper life where the traveler's journey is done.